Hey there, Brookside, and welcome to a brand new year, a brand new series, and maybe a brand new you. We're going to be talking today about being renewed and transformed into something more than what we already are. But just before we get started, are you newer to Brookside Services? If you are, we would love it if you would let us know that you connected in today. The best way to do that is to head over to our online connection card at connect.mybrookside.church. It's just a quick card to fill in, and when you do that, Brookside will make a donation to crisis relief work happening right here in the Ottawa region. We're going to get into the kickoff of our new series in just a few moments, but right now we're going to get things started with some worship.
Where heaven spun creations, His pride and adoration, treasures woven by His love. His careful hands, they hold us safe within His promise of calling and of destiny. Where heaven spun creations, His pride
mercy, follow me. There wasn't a day that you weren't by my side. And there wasn't a day that you let me fall. And in all of my life, your love has been true. With all of my life, I will worship you. And there wasn't a day that you weren't by my side, and there wasn't a day that you let me fall. In all of my life, your love has been true. With all of my life, I will worship you. I will worship you. We thank you, Jesus, for your faithfulness to your people. You are faithful. Your love, your promises, they just go on and on and on. They have no end. No end to your goodness, to your love for us. Before the beginning of the world, and long after, you're faithful, Lord. We worship you. We worship you. And I count on one thing. The same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now. And in the waiting, the same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. And yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy in all my days. Yes, I will. Let's sing that again. I count on one thing. The same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now. In the waiting, the same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. And yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy in all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will, and I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name of all names, that nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify. to praise, to glorify the name of all names, that nothing can stand against, and I choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, that nothing can stand against. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. And oh, yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you for your love and your grace, for your presence in our lives. And Lord, we echo that sentiment. It's our desire to say, yes, we will give you praise. Praise you in the highest heavens. You deserve all praise and glory. God, help us to recognize how good and gracious you are, bringing us through to the completion of another year, launching us into this new year to come. Just the fact that you are the same today as you were last year, you will always be the same, and we can trust your promises. We can trust your presence. We can know that you are a God who's at work in everything. So God, I pray that in the midst of everything we're going through right now, the highs and the lows, the challenges, the frustrations, the uncertainty, all these things, help us to keep our eyes fixed on you so that we can give you the praise that you deserve, that we can enter into the kind of life that you have offered to us. God, we pray that you would be glorified here in our midst, whether we are at home or wherever we happen to be right now. We pray for your grace and strength. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, so glad that you're tuning in with us today. My name's Greg. I'm the lead pastor here at Brookside. And whether you're at home or whether you're listening later on in the car or wherever you happen to be right now, we're so glad that you've tuned in with us. We pray that this will be a valuable time, valuable experience for you today. We're into the new year already. 2023 has begun. Maybe 2022. I'm jumping a little ahead. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't go that fast. We're into 2022. And one of the things we often wonder this time of year as we're kind of launching into a new year is how are we going to live this year well? We've all got dreams, we've all got plans, we've all got things that we want to pursue and see happen. And some of us are a little nervous about what's going to happen this year with COVID still being what it is. And, we've got hope for the boosters and all this. Anyways, we don't know what's ahead, but we know the one who does. And if you're like me, you're wondering, how can I make sure that 2022 is the best possible year it can be? This is kind of the time of year that if we're going to do it, often it's now that we slow down a little bit at least and try and ask those questions. How am I really doing? Am I going the direction that I think I'm going? Am I going to get where I hope to get by this time next year if I continue going in the direction that I am? A number of years back, a book came out that caused a bit of a stir in Christian circles. It was called Blue Like Jazz. Author Donald Miller said some interesting things. Don't know if I agree with some of those conclusions that he came to, but one of the things that he talked about was how so many of us kind of just approach life and how we assume we got to go. And this is kind of what our culture tells us. Here's the way you got to go if you're going to make it. He said this: if you work hard, stay focused, never give up, you'll eventually get what you want in life. Kind of simple, isn't it? Just figure out what you want to get, work hard, stay focused, keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, and eventually you'll be rewarded. You'll get what you want. He followed it up with a bit of a warning, which a lot of times we don't really think as much about. He said sometimes the things that we want most in life are the things that will kill us, or at least make life miserable for us. Sometimes they mess things up because, as we discover, and hopefully we do discover eventually, they're not actually as good for us as we thought they were. Sometimes we're pursuing things that are counterproductive to our well-being and to the well-being of our family. Sometimes it's just because they're things that suck so much of our energy and time and passion out of us that they kind of pull us away and keep us from more important things in our lives, causing us to kind of chase dreams and goals that ultimately don't really amount to much, don't really matter when you get to the end of the day. For some of us, like getting to the top of our field, getting to the top of our trade, getting to the top of our game is like number one thing, and how could anything be more important than that? And you kind of get there and you realize, oh, I guess it wasn't that important after all. Some of us, it's getting that monster home, getting that vacation property, it's getting that expensive car, or it's being able to retire early, or to be able to have holidays in the sun and kind of travel around the world and all this kind of stuff. And nothing wrong with any of those kinds of things, but if they come at the expense of family, if they come at the expense of your relationship with God or your relationships with other people, then it's may not be the smartest way to live your life. It may not be the most important thing to go at. And even that assumption that Miller made there, does that really make sense? You know, work hard, stay focused, never give up, and you eventually get what you want in life. How do you know if what you want in life is actually what you need or what's actually best for you? How do you make sure that you're aiming for what really matters this year? You know, how can you live your best life in 2022? That's the focus of this new teaching series that we're getting into right now. Renewed, transformed into something new, allowing God to transform us into our best selves. That's what we are looking at. And as we get started, we're going to find out that Jesus kind of tells us how to be sure that we can live our best life. And it's a great lead into a study of the book of Romans chapter 12 that this series is going to really unfold into. But as we kind of get started, I want to kind of hone in on this moment in Jesus' ministry life where he's talking to the crowds about what it means to live life and follow God, and he's actually talking about what his purpose was and what he had come to do. And here he's actually talking to skeptics. He's talking to doubters, people who are questioning who Jesus is and what he's there for, and all that kind of thing. So Jesus told them in John chapter 10, verse 10, he said, "You know what? The thief's purpose is to steal and to kill and to destroy, but my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life." That's why Jesus came. That's what Jesus said his purpose was. That was his intention. When he says, "Follow me," and we say, "Okay, I will follow you," this is what he is leading us into, this rich and satisfying life. In other translations, it's abundant life, life to the full, just fully enjoyed, fully realized life. And it got me thinking about the fact that for a lot of Christians that I know, a lot of people in churches these days, you know, they may be thankful for forgiveness of sin, and they may be relieved of the fact that, you know, they're rescued from an eternity of separation from God, all those kinds of things. But how many of us really, truly experience this rich and satisfying life? This soul-satisfying, enriching life that Jesus said he came to lead us into. And if we're not experiencing it, at least not in the way that we would like, why not? Why is it we so often struggle to experience it, and what can we do about it? How can we change? How can we experience that kind of life day in and day out in 2022 and beyond? Well, in his classic letter to the early Christian followers who lived in Rome, the Apostle Paul gives us a clue. He kind of gives us a bit of a roadmap, actually, for how you and I can experience a rich and satisfying life in 2022. Like, isn't that what you want for yourself, for your family, for others around you? How do we experience this richness, this satisfaction that is ours in Jesus? Paul's answer begins in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, and we're going to turn there in just a second, and we're going to answer this question, basically, as we kind of spend some time in this together. How do we find a rich and satisfying life? I've said it a bunch of times because it's so often elusive to us. How do we experience it? How do we know it? Is your life today, would you characterize it as rich and satisfying? And if not, what can you do about it? How can you experience that? Paul gives us 3 things that we need to do if we want to do that. The first one is this, simply said, super challenging, super huge to do. Give yourself wholly to God. And wholly is not a term that we use very often these days. It's like, what Paul is telling us is that we need to give ourselves more than just a little bit of ourselves to God or try and get God into our lives. We need to give ourselves fully to him. Paul says this, beginning at Romans 12:1. He says, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. I want to unpack this a little bit because there's just so much in just this simple verse here. Following Jesus isn't just about taking in a weekend gathering every once in a while, taking in a worship service, or giving some money, or helping out and serving on occasion, or even regularly. It's not about doing these things. When the Bible talks about worship, it talks about following him. It's about this full surrender of ourselves to him, giving ourselves completely over to God. That's kind of the pathway to life, the pathway to this richness and fullness. Now, so let's unpack a couple of the terms, a couple of the phrases in here. The first one is the word therefore, which is what it starts with, the very first word of this passage. But it's a connecting word, and it's kind of reminding us that there's like 11 other chapters in the book of Romans that led up to this point. And those passages, those chapters are filled with the mercy of God, the glory of God, the grace of God. And over the last couple of weeks together, as we've been kind of leading into Christmas and re-examining the Christmas story, we remembered a little bit of the grace of God that is ours in Jesus Christ. And if you're not familiar with the book of Romans, why don't you make that like a mini challenge for this week? Read through the book of Romans. Read through those 11 chapters, a couple of chapters a week, or a couple of chapters a day. It doesn't take long to do. It'll be soul satisfying and refreshing and challenging in ways too. There's so much there for you. But what's coming here, what Paul is getting into in Romans chapter 12 is not just some kind of random list, or kind of a cold, rigid list of commands for you and I that we just kind of got to follow. And following Jesus is all about all these commands. And a Christian living is a grateful response to the grace of God. It's recognizing the good news, and it's just responding in gratitude and love and amazement to what God has done for us. So I just want to encourage you to read. If you're not sure what the therefore is referring to, go back, read through it. You'll be glad that you did. Paul says, therefore, in light of all God's mercy, present yourselves, offer your body, he says. And here that is, it implies your whole body. It implies your whole being, your whole spirit, body and spirit, your whole self. That's really what he's getting at. The idea here is hold nothing back. Offer your body, your entire self, to what? To being, as Paul puts it here, being a living sacrifice. Holy and dedicated to God, he says, completely set apart for the kingdom of God. Like every fiber of your being, no longer living for yourself, but offered up to God. You no longer belong to you. You belong to Jesus. You belong to God. You're giving yourself over to him, and you are a living sacrifice. You haven't died. You haven't been put on an altar and you're dead. It's like, no, I'm alive. This world that I'm living in is kind of the altar that I'm upon, but I am living out a life of sacrifice to God. And Paul tells us this is your true and proper worship. Like, this is what it means to worship God. This is your reasonable service, as it's put in some of the other translations. It's the only kind of reasonable response to what God has done for us. If we truly understand what God has done for us, that this is a no-brainer. It's like, well, of course this is what I'm going to do. What else would I want to do? This is the way I want to live my life because of what Jesus has done for me. You know, too many people today, like they assume that kind of the key to this rich and satisfying life, this abundant life, is to try and manipulate things and manipulate our situation and kind of pressure God into helping us get what we want. You know, if I go to church, if I say my prayers, if I serve on a team, if I give, if I'm nice, if I'm a nice guy, all that kind of stuff. If I do all those things, then boom, Jesus is just going to pretty much give me what I want. And if I get everything that I want, then I'll be rich. And then if I'm rich, then I'll be satisfied. And that's not the key. That may be what the world tells us, but that's not what the Bible teaches us. Step one, according to Paul, surrender control. Give yourself wholly to God. Let him have control of your life, every part of it. That's where we begin. The second thing is simply this. So how do I find a rich and satisfying life? I give myself wholly to God. Secondly, I allow God to change the way I think. I allow God to change the way I think. Listen to what he says. He goes on in verse 2 of Romans 12. He says, do not conform to the pattern, the behavior and customs is really what he's getting at, the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So there's this kind of one thing that we have to let go of, or we have to resist, and this other thing we have to embrace, and we have to lean into. In the New Living Translation, which I often use, Paul writes it's put this way: not to conform to the pattern of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. So we give ourselves wholly to God, and then we allow God to change the way we think. We stop assuming that our way is the right way. We stop assuming that the things that make sense to me are necessarily the right things. We say, you know what? I'm going to trust God more than I trust myself. I'm going to stop assuming that the way that makes the most sense to me and that's the right way. I'm going to lean on God. I'm going to trust him instead. And that's really, when you think about it, these are kind of the choices that are before us. Conform or be transformed. Conform or be transformed. Every one of us at any given moment is doing one or the other. Most of you know the Winter Olympics are at least scheduled to begin about a month from now, Beijing. So many reasons why I'm not really sure what's going to happen there, but this has been in the plans for years, and every athlete who's heading there or planning to head there has had one thing on their minds as they prepared, that the center of the podium, right? That they're going to win. They're not just going to show up and be able to say, hey, made it. So glad I'm here. Like, they're there to win. And every athlete that wants to win, to stand a chance of winning, they have to refuse to conform. They have to refuse to conform to the patterns probably of their family and their own upbringing, their own desires, their own wants, and their friends and all that kind of stuff. They got to stop conforming to the eating patterns and the exercise patterns and even the leisure habits and all that kind of stuff of their friends and family. They have to march to the beat of a different drum. They have to kind of allow their bodies and their minds to be transformed by habits that lead to health, healthier training, healthier eating, the right exercise, the right programming, the right mind conditioning even so that they're kind of transforming their bodies, sharpening them, strengthening them, preparing them, and their minds as well, so that they can be at the top of their game when they arrive in Beijing, so that they can actually win, and so that they actually believe that they can win, because they might have the capacity, but if they don't believe it, they're not going to try hard enough to actually make it. They've got to believe they can win as well. They sacrifice all the benefits of their cultural and social norms for the benefit of the training and conditioning that they're under, so that they can be transformed into Olympians. Like that's their goal. And I was thinking that's just for sporting events. Like here's men and women, young, a lot of them teenagers, like they are sacrificing incredibly for skiing or for figure skating or curling or hockey or whatever the sport is. It's just a sport. It's just a sport, and why would we think that it would be anything less intense or serious for what we're doing, which is charting the course of our lives. Charting the course of our lives. So are we ready to resist conforming to the things of this world? Are we ready to allow ourselves to be transformed by the renewing of our mind by God? There's so many things in our culture today that we need to resist conforming to. Like just the way our culture is screaming that culture is supreme, like that the majority rules and the government calls the shots, and it gets to determine all these other things like who you are, what your identity is, and how you find your identity, and how you who you are, and what makes for a good pastime and good entertainment, and all these things that our culture is kind of throwing at us constantly. We have to ask ourselves, are these the things that are in line with the mind of God? And if they are not, then we've got to resist those things. We've got to not be conformed to those things. And we need to embrace the things that are in line with the truth of God. What are some of those things? I love, I've mentioned this passage, at least part of it, not too long ago in another message, because I find this just such a foundational passage. This is Solomon, thousands of years ago, telling us how we can have our hearts and minds transformed. This is what he said. This is Proverbs 3, verses 5 down to verse 12. He begins by saying this. He says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you the right path to take." So there's something to reject, there's something to embrace, and there's even a promise in there of what happens when you do it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. That's what we embrace. Don't lean on your own understanding. You got to reject that. Seek his will in all you do. He'll show you the path to take. He goes on to say, verse 7, don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Some of us are just a little bit too high about ourselves and our ideas and our opinions. Solomon said, don't be so impressed with yourself. Instead, fear the Lord. Turn away from evil. Then you'll have healing in your body and strength for your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the best part of everything you produce. Don't hang on to it for yourself. Don't be greedy. Don't, just give whatever's left over that you can't use anyway. Be honoring to God with your wealth, with the best part of everything you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain, and your vats will overflow with good wine. Said, my child, don't reject the Lord's discipline. Don't be upset when he corrects you. For the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights. So we can start off 2022 with a renewed mind. When we feed it healthy things, when we pour spiritually nourishing things into our spirits, into our minds, by what we watch, by what we read, by what we spend our time on, whether it's in front of a screen or otherwise. We can exercise our spiritual muscles through prayer, through just acting in obedience. When God says, do this, then we do this instead of, well, I know you say this, but this is what I want, and I'm going to do that instead. Like walking in obedience, all these things. We can train in partnership with the Holy Spirit to think differently. We can learn to think differently about things. Noom is a popular new diet app. I've seen commercials for it. I don't know how many times. You may have seen that yourself. You may have tried it. You've probably seen those ads, and one of the main things they keep saying is it's all about psychology. It's all about psychology. Change the way you think. Change the way you eat. That's kind of their approach. And I remember when I first saw commercials like that, I used to think, that's not going to work. That doesn't help. My problem is that I don't understand. I understand fully. I get I can understand all that stuff. It doesn't stop me from picking up an apple fritter and shoving it in my mouth. It doesn't. That's not the problem. But as I thought about it more, and maybe I haven't tried Noom, so maybe if you have, maybe it's working great, and that's awesome. But as I was thinking about this more, I was realizing my problem is that I'm thinking a little bit too superficially about thinking. When we're told to think about the right things, that God will change the way we think, it's not just recognizing stuff. It's not just kind of that superficial level of recognition of stuff, but it goes deeper from recognition to understanding. It's like, now I understand how all of this works. But it's deeper than that too, because you can understand it and totally disagree. We need to agree with it. We need to embrace it. We need to affirm those things. So it's like, yeah, I understand it. I recognize it. I understand it. I agree with it. And then I actually live it out. I practice these things. And until we get to that level of actually living them out, actually practicing these things, then we don't truly think that way. So that's the true evidence of what you think is what you do, how you act. Like that's the evidence of it. And we find this rich and satisfying life as we give ourselves wholly to God and as we allow Him to change the way we think. When you do all that, you'll finally be in a position to begin to do the third thing, or experience or appreciate the third thing, which is simply this: discover the beauty of God's will. We get to the place where we begin to discover the beauty of God's will. Second half of Romans 12, verse 2 says this: Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, perfect will. That's how God's will is described here. It's awesome. It's great. It's perfect. If we understood everything better, we would never question God's will. We'd never say, oh, that's so dumb. We'd be just saying, God, you're brilliant. That's awesome. I wish I'd seen it. I wish I understood it better. This is the best way it could possibly be. And the more we follow Him, the more we get to know Him, the more we allow Him to shape our minds, the more we start to recognize that. That's where new life is found. It's not freedom from every problem, but it's full agreement with and confidence in the unfolding will of God in our life and in our world. I mentioned earlier at the beginning the book by who was that? Yes, thank you, Miller. Blue Like Jazz. I read an excerpt from another guy whose name is Carey Nieuwhof, who basically said, here's all the reasons I don't agree with his conclusions in Blue Like Jazz. But there was this comment in the response to Carey's thing that just really struck me, and I thought, this fits so well, I want to wrap up with this. It was written by a guy, P. Desmarais. I don't know what the P stands for, maybe Paul, maybe something else, I don't know. But this is what he said. He said, when I was in college, I stopped attending church. I still considered myself a Christian. I just wasn't going to church all that much, and But then after college, when somebody invited me to go back to church, I gradually realized that my attitudes and my morality had completely changed while I was not attending church. It was alarming. It reminded me of a trip to the beach that I had one day. And I've got a pic here of Bournemouth Beach. This was during COVID. Doesn't that send chills down your spine? It's like, whoa, interesting. I don't think I want to be on this beach. But he says, it reminds him of this time he went into the ocean. He's having fun swimming around for quite a while. And he decided it's time to get out of the water, time to head back. And when he came out of the water, everything looked different. Nothing was the same as when he had gone into the water, and he realized that he was no longer where he thought he was. He was playing in the water, but he wasn't aware that there was a strong current that was just moving along the shoreline. And as he played, he was actually going further and further and further down the shore till when the time was for him to come out, he was lost. He didn't have his glasses, and anyways, it took him quite a while to get back to where he had left himself in the first place. And he said this. He said, likewise, when coming back, referring now back to his time away from church and now coming back, he said, I didn't realize that I was being carried away by the attitudes of the non-believers around me. That experience, he said, what made me realize that I cannot continue to act in accordance with God's will without believers around me to remind me what is right and how to live. It also made me question if anyone is really strong enough to live entirely on their own. And if there is such a person who is so strong, why aren't they using their strength to build up their weaker brothers and sisters? What I loved about what Desmarais was talking about here was the necessity for us to be spending time with God's people, spending time with God, with His Word, allowing Him to change us. Because if we're not allowing ourselves to be changed by God, if we're not being transformed by Him, we are conforming more and more to the world around us. If we want to live a life that is truly meaningful, that is truly rich, that is truly satisfying in our lives, it comes down to this. Am I going to swim upstream with the Lord, following His will, following His ways, doing those difficult things that they may not be what you would choose as your number one thing to do at a particular time on a particular day? Are you willing to invest the time and energy and effort to be in the presence of God, to allow Him to change you? Or are you going to just kind of go with the flow, regardless of where it leads? And spoiler, it doesn't lead to a good place. We need to be aware of that. So if you want a rich and satisfying life this year, give yourself wholly to God. Everything you are, everything you have, allow God to change the way you think. And as you do that, that allows you to discover just how beautiful and wise and good the life-giving will of God is for you and for those around you. As we get into this further in the weeks ahead, we're going to discover more of what that means and kind of a little bit more practical, looking at some of the ways that this is lived out in our lives. It's going to be a great ride, and it does lead to life and peace and happiness. If that's what you're looking for, this is the pathway to it. Following God, trusting Him, leaning on Him day by day. There's no better life than that. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your faithfulness and your grace. We thank you for the hope that we have in Jesus Christ and the blessing of knowing that as we follow you, we're not leaving life behind. We are being enriched. We are being blessed. We are being satisfied in ways that we never could any other way. Help us to trust you and to trust that and to lean in and discover all that you have for us. We want to get to the end of this year and be able to look back and say, what a blessed year this was. We can, and we look forward to it in Jesus' name. Amen.
surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again and again and again. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your Son for redemption, the price for my heart. Oh, I don't have a context for that kind of love. Don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, again and again and again. Oh, my heart has been in your sight long before my first breath, running into your arms is running to life from death. And I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out, just as I am. You pull me in, and I know I need you now. Run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again. Run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul found a friend, so I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, again and again and again and again. Oh, oh.
Hey, Brookside, thanks for being here today. Even though our in-person gatherings are suspended for now, our mission continues, because we all know that we all still need more of Jesus. All of us, me, you, our neighbors, our coworkers, and everyone in our community. And that's why our mission is to help develop fully engaged followers of Jesus. When you give to Brookside, you're helping to make more of that happen. So we want to thank you for giving generously so that we can continue to push forward with that mission. If you want to give, you can do that easily and conveniently through e-transfer and pre-authorized giving. If you want to give by check, you can do that while in-person gatherings are suspended by just mailing your check to the church address. More details about all of your options for how you can give and get on board with this mission are available at mybrookside.church/giving. Hey, if you're newer to Brookside, could you do us a quick favor? If you are newer to Brookside, we are really glad that you're here and we'd love to know that you connected in today. The best way to let us know that you are here is to fill in our online connection card at connect.mybrookside.church. Just let us know a little bit about yourself, and when you do that, we'll say hi, and we will also make a donation to Respond Ottawa and their efforts to help meet crisis needs across our city. Just go to connect.mybrookside.church. We would love to meet you. Thanks again for connecting in today. Remember that our upcoming Sunday gatherings will be online only. We hope to see you back here next week, and until then, remember the new year when you're writing the date on everything. Stay safe, and we will see you soon.